I don't believe that we are different, because whether you go to South Africa or whether you're going to Zambia, Zimbabwe, we have things that tie us together as Africans.
Hello everyone. Thank you for listening. We are looking to the part 3 of the Atalaku Effect interview with the CEO of Enda Sportswear, Navalayo Osembo. So on the part 1, we talked about her life before Enda, so where she grew up, where she worked, a mix of education and profession. The second part, we talked about Enda, where was the idea coming from, the origination, the steps she made after she created with her co-founder the idea, the difficulties she has raising money, and then what is next and what we can look forward for Enda Sportswear. Now let's talk about Africa. As an African being born in Nairobi, raised in Nairobi, Nava, the first question I have for you, what does it mean for you to be African?
For me to be African is actually a very deep question. I would refer that to the speeches of Thomas Sankara, the upright man from Burkina Faso. Mm-hmm. And I would say my ideas of Africa are very much inspired by him and also other writers like Frantz Fanon. Mm-hmm. And I would say as an African, I see myself as part of a continent, really. I don't believe that we are different, because whether you go to South Africa or whether you're going to Zambia, Zimbabwe, we have things that tie us together as Africans. And I feel like we have a common identity. We definitely have common languages, and we have pride of being children of the continent that was the home of mankind, and the continent that is the richest in the world, the continent that's has the fastest growing economies, fastest growing population. So as an African, I see hope. I see there's a lot of work to be done, but we have all the recipes for success. Mm-hmm. We just need to figure out how to steer this ship in a way that works for us as Africans.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that. Just the mention of Thomas Sankara get me excited. Every time I hear his name, I just have that thing in my head. I just like, okay.
You know, he was an amazing man. Died before his time.
Indeed. Okay, I really like that answer. Thank you for that, Nava. The follow-up question that I will have for you will be, if you were not building Enda Sportswear right now, I think you saw a problem, you saw an opportunity, and you decided to dedicate your life on it. If you were not building Enda Sportswear, what's a problem that you see exists right now in Africa that you would like to either solve or be part of the solution?
I think I would want to, I don't know what it would be, but I would find a way to engage the mentality of Africans, like something that really brings back the histories of like the Mali and Songhai Empire, Great Zimbabwe, the pyramids, like to really get people to a point where they see themselves as kings and queens. I feel like there's a lot of self-defeat, a lot of self-flagellation, and there's just a lot of self-hate, if I could call that, that we don't see ourselves as good as or as better as the world. And we have kind of accepted that, not just because with our relations with the world, but also with ourselves. So I wouldn't know what that project would be, but it would be, in Bob Marley's words, emancipating ourselves from mental slavery, something about that.
Nice. Yeah, I really... I really like that, and I'm sure you've talked about that with Lina as well. And even having lived outside of Kenya, right? Like you look at the news and you see how other peoples or nations are portraying Africans and African countries, and sometimes you come home and it's true that even ourselves, we are not helping the world to see us better sometimes, right? And I like that you say self-hate, self-criticizing yourself. So what do you think it would take to kind of change that mentality and that self-image? Do you think it's our own image that we are perpetuating, or do you think it's we ended up being convinced by the way the outside world is looking at us, and we took it as granted that, okay, if they look at us that way, that might be what we are, or a mix of both? Like, first of all, what do you think? Where do you think that's coming from, and what idea do you think might help us sway us in the right direction?
I think it comes from a lack of understanding our history. I wouldn't say that we don't understand ourselves. I think we do. It's just who is ourselves? That's the question. Because a lot of people's self-identity is not really their self-identity. They just don't know it, but it's not. It's been an identity of something. Because if you look at African history, the traditions were oral. They were passed through stories and songs. And with all the colonization, slavery, migration, like a lot of history was lost in that. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people's self-identity is identity, like they think it's self-identity, but it's not, but it's kind of what has kind of grown over time. Mm-hmm. And I think a way to do this is to go back to the beginning and understand history, like not the books, because unfortunately some of our governments whitewash some of the history for different reasons, but to just really go back and read the story of Africa. Like brain surgeries were being done in Africa, like treatments were being treated with like traditional medication and herbs, which are now being used in modern medication. People like the first library in Timbuktu of like vast like teachers and books and all of that, but we don't know that, we don't know that there was a great Zimbabwe empire. We don't know about the pyramids of Sudan. We don't we are a great people, but we don't actively look for our history to understand that. And I think now with social media and the internet, we become more lazy to look for information. So I would say it starts with self-identity, but that self-identity has to start with a willingness to self-reflect and say, who am I as a person? Like, who are my ancestors? And in the words of Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, like secure the base, like know yourself and interact with the world from understanding your ground. Like know yourself, stand your ground, and then you can interact with the world. It doesn't mean that you're like isolated, but it means you decide what's good for you based on the knowledge of what you know about yourself. But right now we keep swaying with what's current or what's not because we don't know ourselves. So I would say it would have to be something about history.
History, I see. That's really deep. I really like that. And I also like again, from my understanding of what you're saying, it can come from both fronts, right? The first one being our governments in our education. As you said, sometimes we are not told in school our own history. It's sometimes either changed for, again, different reasons based on the countries. But the second aspect is, I think, parents, right? You mentioned social media. As we are growing up and looking at how our kids will interact with internet, it seems a lot more around distraction and entertainment than actually knowledge seeking. So what do you think as a mother, I mean, I'm not a father yet, but I hope to be soon. What do you think can be done at home while waiting for our government to eventually change the educational system? What are you doing or do you think can be done at home to make sure that your children will grow up with an idea of who they are and where they're coming from?
I think it's a complex question because I would say it starts with the parents, right? The parent has to take it upon themselves to understand and then teach the child, But a lot of our parents are busy trying to make a living. So time is also a factor, resources are a factor. So I don't want to put it on the parents so much. But I would say in like having conversations with our children about who they are and what they consume and what that consumption makes them feel. For instance, in terms of body image, what's the ideal body image? A lot of kids would have this Eurocentric ideal of like blonde hair, very tiny and stuff like that. Whereas we know like African bodies are not like that, at least majority of the bodies. But just having a conversation, I don't want to quote too many people, but you know what Malcolm X talks about, like who taught you how to hate yourself? But just essentially like having those conversations and asking, so what do you think this is the ideal sense of beauty? Or why do you think this is the ideal way of life? And why is that? Like we tend to think our children are children, but they actually have very flexible minds, and they are intelligent, and they can, like, they see things and they understand things. So let's not assume that they don't understand, but just engage them from that point and not hide, because sometimes our culture is like, you don't want to talk about stuff that's embarrassing or taboo. But I guess in the internet age, everything is available. So if you're not willing to talk to our children about these things, then the world is educating them, and they'll probably educate them wrong. So it's a factor of time, and it's also a factor of passing the right information to our children and challenging them to think differently. The same way they ask us why all the time, we should also ask them, why do you think that? And challenge them so that they see that they come from a lineage of success, of beauty, of pride, just kind of restoring back that self-pride and self-love.
I actually like that a lot. From what I've seen, maybe it's specific to just Cameroon or maybe even my tribe in Cameroon, but it's true what you say that as a child or as a parent, you don't think about talking to your child about certain things until they reach a certain age. Like, I remember the very first conversation, deep conversation that I had with my parents. I was probably already something like 15, almost finishing high school. And I've seen, when I was growing up in France, I've seen families have deep conversation with their 6, 7 years old, and it was going back and forth, right? So do you think it's an African mentality?
Yeah, I think it's also good to interrogate what African mentality means, because sometimes it connotes something negative. But I think when you step back and ask yourself, why was there such a huge separation between adults and children? And one of the things, it goes back to respect, that there was such a high demand for respect, and that respect pretty much preserved order in the society and allowed people to basically treat each other as humans, as brothers and sisters. But some of it is good and some of it is bad. And I think one of the bad things is assuming that a child is underdeveloped and is not an independent thinking person. And
Sure.
Those times were different because the information flows were controlled, and it was very clear on how a child should grow. But right now you have so many multiple information sources. You have so much that's coming onto our children that you have to literally change tact. The mentality has to change from listen to me to let's talk, because there's just so much out there. And it is true that in our culture we don't really speak to children, but I think a lot of that is changing with our generation. I see that with my children. We talk a lot, quite a bit, in a way that I would never talk to my parents back in the day. But you literally just have to make time and listen. I think for parents, the important thing is we always have these advices that we want to give to our kids. But with children, let it be their conversation. They should lead the conversation, ask open-ended questions and just listen to what they have to say and develop that conversation from what they're talking about. And you'll be able to listen and hear so much. But it has to come down to having the time to have that conversation and being engaged, not being on your phone, but literally listening and picking out, listening to the child and picking out what they're saying.
Nice. Yeah, I can only imagine just the way you're describing that, how an awesome mother you might be. That's amazing.
Raising children is, it's a mixed bag.
Definitely. Nava, I think this conversation cannot be completed if we don't talk about the place of women in Africa, right? You're a female CEO, you are a mother, you're a female professional and leader in Africa. One question that I always ask myself is, as far as I can remember, there's always been in Cameroon and I think all over Africa, a lot of organizations working on women education, girls' education, family planning for boys and girls from a very young age. I had a family education myself, actually going to high school. And I look at it today and I wonder, I started to learn about those organizations and those different educational endeavors 15 years ago, right? And at some level, when I look at data, either from the UN or any other international organism working in Africa, it seems to be better, but it seems way, way far away from what it was supposed to be like 15 or 20 years ago. When they were forecasting data, they were getting to the fact that, oh, we think that in 2020, I don't know, more than 50% of girls below 15 years old will be to school. So I feel like a lot of the mentality hasn't changed. A lot of the data or the goals have not been reached. Again, a lot of effort has been made, but we're not there yet. And one thing that I think, one way that I explain that to myself is that I feel like people like me has been looking at those organizations and say, okay, they are doing the job. So on my end, I have nothing to do, right? Beside, as I've been taught by my mother and my education to be respectful to women, just some basic questions that people are still questioning, like equal rights, equal salary for the same work, things like that. But I don't feel like I've been doing more. I know that you give a lot of speech. I know that you've talked about your experience as a women CEO, how tougher it is for you than compared to a man to raise money or even to gather respect. At some events, people speak to you differently just because you're women. What do you think as a man today I can do better? Because I think through me, it will talk to maybe our male audience listener. I'm trying to bring that to the individual level so that each of us can know what we can do more and how we can contribute. I know it's a tough question, but I'm guessing from your expertise, from your perspective, from your experience, you probably have good pointers of at the individual level what can be done.
I'd say there's like a huge opportunity for change, and I think part of the reason is because everybody left it to like women's organizations, and we didn't necessarily change our culture. So the underlying base of the problem remained the same. That's the culture and the religion and all the things, and we basically just did a few things to improve, but none of them so deep as to make changes. So I would say one of the things is that I honestly don't think it's going to change unless men lead the change. So by leading the change, I mean treating women with respect, recognizing and speaking up when you see a colleague or a friend doing something that is disrespectful, or basically being that kind of boss who is not necessarily expecting sexual favors from women, or, you know, like as a person, like treating women like with respect, like as people, not because they're women. And also from a traditional perspective, are we willing to, for example, share our inheritance with our sisters, or are we going to say, oh, she's going to be married off anyway? But, you know, because those are the underlying things that actually cause inequality, because one group has like the financial and economic resources and the other one doesn't necessarily have the resources. So it's very it's easy to do unless you have to have something that is pushing you from your comfort zone, right? So for that kind of like power to be shared or change to be achieved, then the people with the power have to be willing to share that power. Are they willing to share that power? Are you going to recognize that your wife has rights, or that your sisters have rights? You know, like, are we going, you know, there's so much, but I think it all comes down to the individual level and holding each other accountable, mostly men holding other men accountable and saying, this is not right, or you should do better, or something like that.
I see. It's kind of interesting because we're talking about that with a couple of friends of mine, and in our circle, I would say that my male friends, we're kind of lucky in the sense that we have the same education in terms of the respect of women, right? So, and I feel like maybe I'm getting complacent because around me, because I don't see the behaviors that I mentioned on TV, or either Lina or my mother are telling me about, because I don't see that personally. I feel like, okay, where are those men they are talking? I know they exist, right? But because I don't see them, I don't interact with them on a daily basis, I feel like I'm not doing enough, just because I'm like, wait, in my circle, the men I know are already, most of them stand-up men, right? So what else can I do more, right? And I feel like maybe we're talking about circles where all of the men behave the same way, but because they only hang out among them, well, it's difficult to change. Again, it's a tough question. It's not just for you. I think it's kind of for everyone. But like, I'm always wondering, without just saying I'm going to give money to an organization working on educating women or girls, it's kind of difficult. Like on my daily life, like when I wake up in the morning, to just think about, okay, I want to act, I want things to change, but what can I do? Because around me, I'm not seeing those situations, right? I'm not hearing, I'm not being witness of all of the bad things that I know happen. And it's sometimes a challenge to just say, okay, I feel like I'm basically useless. I'm good for myself, I'm good for my friends, I'm good for my family, but besides that, what can be done is a tough question.
I think that's actually a good question, and it's actually like really good that you find yourself in a circle where most of the people are like that. And I would say the challenges, like for every African family, even for the children who've grown up, gone abroad, studied, there are still the other family members that are back home who are still holding a lot of these views. And I think in especially family situations that it's good if you don't happen to be in those, but if you happen to be in a situation where something is happening in your family and not necessarily amongst your friends, and this is the family back home, whether it be Cameroon or Kenya or wherever, that you take a stand, because it makes a difference if a stand is being taken by a man and that stand is contrary to what another man believes. So it doesn't necessarily mean you go out looking. I think it's great that you have achieving personal change at a personal level. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go out and say, okay, what can I fix? What can I fix? But always being ready that when that moment of reckoning comes, you actually stand up for what you believe. You know, the story of Peter in the Bible, who was basically saying, oh, I won't deny you. But when the moment came when he was asked, do you know this guy? And he's like, I've never met this guy. Who is he again? So it's very easy to think that we understand like rights and that we respect women, but then you have to kind of be ready to know that there are situations where you will find yourself and your beliefs and challenges will be tested, and it might be embarrassing to stand up, but that you are ready for that particular moment to stand up for something that is unjust. So it's okay to kind of be in a place where you are not, like, people around you are aware and are not like doing bad things. But I think the thing is kind of being ready for the moment where you have to stand up and you actually do stand up.
I see. Yeah, I actually kind of like that. Yeah, it's not, even if you don't do something today, know that it might happen and then be ready to act on it. Okay, I like that. I like that a lot. We have a couple more questions. We are reaching towards the end, Nava. I have a question that came to mind, and this is not just about you as women, but as we grow up, as we mature, and as you, when you're like leading not just a company but a movement, you play different roles, right? Do you have siblings, by the way?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. So you are your sister, your mother, your friend, your colleague, your boss, your leader, your motivational speaker, your daughter, your aunt. So you combine a lot of different roles all in yourself, right? And you only have like 24 hours in a day. How do you, first of all, do you think of it as different roles in your life? And how do you make sure that you are as successful and you can in different roles? I'm asking that because aspiring entrepreneurs, there's always that scary thought of your idea, your vision will basically take all your life, right? So because you've gone through that, how do you think of those roles and how do you make sure that you're as effective as you can be?
I think first of all, it's just the realization of family support. So my husband is very much involved with the kids. And I think that's a huge part of why I'm able to do what I do, because whether or not I am home, I know that my children are in safe hands. And that's also a challenge to most men, because I do know also other men who will not touch anything considered the babies or will not enter the kitchen. And I mean, we are all raised differently. But I would say from my perspective, if I was not having the support I have at home, I would definitely not be doing this. And a part of it also just comes with trying to manage time. There are days where you will feel guilty that you're not doing enough. And there are days when you will have triumphs that you pursued your dream, but ultimately it just comes down to time management and trying to be really strict about how you spend your time. And I try as much as possible to make sure that I'm doing homework with the kids, and that I try to preserve the weekends for them. So it's balancing your time, but you can only do so much as a person. You really, really need support at home and with the family, so that even if my husband and I are not there, my sister or his sisters are able to step in. And one of the places where I'd say I'm really lucky is that both my family and his family are very involved, and there's always someone to help. And that is part of the reason why I'm able to do what I do.
Awesome. Thank you, Nava. We're going to end up the interview with a couple of firing questions. So, quick question, quick answer, and I think that will be the word of the end. So, what is the one country that you absolutely love to visit the most?
Liberia.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Who is your favorite hero or heroine in Africa?
That's easy. Thomas Sankara.
Thomas Sankara, okay. Who is your favorite African author?
Okoth P. Pitek. He's a Kenyan, in Kenya or Uganda, but he wrote a beautiful poem called The Song of Lawino, which is beautiful.
The Song of Lawino, okay. What is your favorite meal ever?
Ugali, skuma, and chicken. Ooh. That's ugali, kales, and chicken.
Is it a Kenyan dish?
Yes, it is. Very yummy.
Awesome. And for the end, I know you don't just speak English, so I would love for you to take as much as you can, as long as you can. It can be 1 minute, it can be 10 minutes to talk or provide a message in your, I think it's Kiswahili, if I got it right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, any message either to our listeners. It can be parents, children, anyone. But yeah, take as much as you can to pass that message.
Jina langu ni Navalayo Osembo kutoka Kenya, na kwa hivi leo ile message ninayo kwa wasikilizaji ni kwamba polepole ndio mwendo. Hakuna haraka hii maisha. Saa zingine unaweza kuwa unafanya kitu na unasikia kwamba vitu haviendi vile unategemea. Kwa hivyo ni muhimu kujitia moyo na kujua kwamba safari ya ndefu huanzwa na hatua moja, na ni vizuri kutafakari ambayo umefanya na ujipe moyo ukisema ni vizuri, afadhali umeanza safari kuliko kuanza safari. So pole ndio mwendo. Hata kama saa zingine maisha yanakuwa magumu ama vitu haviendi unavyotarajia, ni vizuri kukumbuka ya kwamba kila kitu ambacho kikubwa kilianza na kitu kidogo. Kwa hivyo kazana mwendo, utafika. Asante.
Thank you very much, Nava. And by the way, I will not ask you to translate. Not everything needs to be translated, I think. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Atalaku, to our listeners, for staying with us up until now. Just want to remind everyone, Nava is the co-founder and CEO of Enda Sportswear. So go to endasportswear.com to learn about what she does, the social impact part of it, and just if you need a pair of amazing running shoes, just make sure to check endasportswear.com. Nava, again, thank you very much to be on the show. And yeah, we're looking forward to see where you will be going next, and we'll be following you closely.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and talk to you next time. Atalaku.